Mr. President, Ray McGovern is here to brief you.
Well, Ray, it's a good day, huh? Assad went down. Our support of Netanyahu has turned out to be accurate. And Trump's now got to have a big mess there to figure out about Syria. He says he doesn't want to get involved. And then those Russian tankers went down there. Russians don't look so good now. And so give me some positive news today, right?
Well, if you're interested in Israel's fortunes, they look good right now with Syria falling apart and Israel always very much wishing that Syria keep being chaotic, particularly because that makes it more difficult for arms to get through Syria to southern Lebanon to Hezbollah. The danger that we see, Mr. President, is that Netanyahu and his group will feel their oats to the point of starting a war with Iran in the next 5 weeks before you leave. Now, Syria's air defense is not what it was last time around. It'll be easier if the Israelis decide to take a shot at those nuclear facilities or even those oil facilities in Iran. They will suffer furious retaliation from hypersonic missiles that the Iranians still have. And the Israelis then, at that point, will appeal to you to come in with open military support. So our fear is that's going to happen. Our fear is that the Israelis are feeling their oats and they're really going to just take advantage of this. And the first sign we expect to see is Israeli accusations that Iran either already has or is working very hard on a nuclear weapon. Not fuel or all those kinds of things, but a weapon itself. Now, I have to tell you, Mr. President, that when George W. Bush and Cheney were leaving town at this point, they really tried very much to start a war with Iran. Why? Because they too wanted to please Israel, and then they give a rat's patootie as to what kind of chaos would happen if once they had ridden off into the western sunset. An intelligence assessment spiked that because our intelligence agencies got together and they had an honest man in charge, and they said Iran had stopped working on a nuclear weapon at the end of 2007 and had not resumed work on a nuclear weapon. We're like talking about fuel or enrichment. Now, that judgment is held until right up until March of this year. So you want to make sure that you get the specialists in the nuclear field and in our intelligence field to respond if Tony Blinken tells you that Netanyahu told me that they're working on a nuclear weapon, because that would be the first sign we would see that Israel is intent on zapping them with the full expectation, this is what is important, that you will come in with both feet and bail them out. So that's our worry for the next 6 weeks. Yes, it's a big plus for Israel what happened. We'll see what happens in the long run. But for the nonce, yeah, they've got chaos in Syria just like they wanted, and Hezbollah has taken it on the chin with respect to resupply. Resupply of weapons is very, very difficult right now.
So maybe I'm not understanding something, but if this is a big plus for Israel, why were and these guys there taking over? We're now close to them, right? Blinken, he speaks to them and everything, and they're former Al Qaeda, right?
Former Al Qaeda, former Al
Yeah,
Nusra, yeah.
and so these are the people that the George W. Bush went to war with them, and now we want them over to our side, right? They got rid of Assad for us. They run now, Syria. So the war on terror. Maybe Bush was all wrong there. That you could do business with Al Qaeda. Is that what's going on here? Because this isn't this. I remember in all my briefings that you guys were saying these guys were bad guys. They're now in charge of Syria. Aren't they supposed to be even worse than Assad?
Well, Mr. President, sometimes they change their names, and they think that that will change their deportment or their behavior, or it will give them a chance to dissociate themselves with ISIS. Now, what Al Julani,
What are they going to do? Though are they Muslim fanatics or what? Because I mean they're going to. I mean they got a lot of Christians there and other people in Syria. That's a mixed up population. What are they? They're not going to impose some radical notion of Islam on these people. And
the same.
isn't Bush, well, Trump, how's he going to handle that? He's going to, and Netanyahu wants that? I don't know. I'm getting all confused because we could have, right? We could have let ISIS. Why didn't we let ISIS win?
Well, these folks are protesting that whatever they are, they're not ISIS anymore. They're still on the terrorist list, Mr. President. We mentioned this last time around. I forget whether now, I haven't looked as to whether we're still offering $10 million for Al Jalani, the new head of Syria. I suppose that's been off the web now, but they're still classified as terrorists. So we'll have to see how they behave. But Netanyahu doesn't give a rat's patootie about what they do in Syria as long as there's chaos there and there's difficulty in resupplying Hezbollah.
No, wait, but wait, Ray, because I've been listening to you for years and the CIA and everything, right? Now,
Right?
we all know, I mean, we can't tell the public this, but we know that 15 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia, right?
That's
And,
right.
and there's no way that Saudi Arabia didn't know about this stuff and everything. Well, how you got 15 people? Then they weren't rebels in Saudi Arabia; they were good, solid citizens there. So that's the whole war on terror was about. They attacked us, right? And then I go and give a fist bump there with that guy there. He's more radical than the old guy in Saudi Arabia. And then I'm having trouble following all this stuff because I know we just had a big victory. That's what you told me. But if we could have had that, why didn't we just let celebrate? We couldn't celebrate Al Qaeda attacking us. But that wouldn't work. But why were we upset with ISIS? Why?
Well,
Maybe we could have done business with them all along, and the Taliban. Couldn't we have just got? What are we doing? They're being bought off now with money, or we're going to give them goods, or Israel just knocked out what was left of their navy in Syria. What do they
well,
think?
Mr. President, it's good that you go back
Does
a
Israel want
couple of.
these maniacs to be in there because then they got an easy enemy? Is that it? I don't get it. You know.
Well,
What's
going back
I'm
to.
a little confused. I'm a little confused now. A lot of people
Well,
think
it's
I'm
very.
confused all the time,
It's
but I'm just trying to figure this out. I know we had a big victory, but if we had a big victory because people who were more radical Islamists than Assad, and they were even with Al Qaeda, and we could just buy them off or hustle them. Why didn't we do that before? Why we have to have the whole war on terror that
well,
the second President Bush did? What's that all about?
well, Mr. President, you're quite right. A lot of it is counterintuitive. Now, you
What the hell
mentioned
does
9.
that mean, Ray? It means it's bullshit, right? I mean,
Well, it means
I'm
it's.
not going to be here. I'm just going to be reading the news and, less than, 6 weeks or so. I don't know how it is. I can't even keep track. But have somebody asked me that? What am I supposed to say? Was Bush wrong to
Well,
do the war on terror? So were we Democrats wrong to back? Or could we have just done business with the terrorists? Like you say, the guy's on our most wanted list. Now he's our what is we're going to call him the George Washington of Syria, like we did with that No Din Diem in Vietnam. And is he now one of our guys? You know,
well, Mr. President, we have been supporting
because that's what
these.
Blinken tells me. Blinken tells me he's one of our guys. He could do. Well, why the hell couldn't we have done business with Al Qaeda? You
Well,
know,
Mr. President, going back to 9/11, the clue is there. It's in the 9/11 Commission report on page 147. During the drafting of that commission report, they found Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the so-called mastermind of this whole thing. And they asked him, "Why did you do this?" And he said, "I did it because of my extreme hatred for U.S. policy toward Israel." Whoa. Then there's a little footnote after that at the bottom of the page, and it says, it's the same thing that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's nephew said when he tried to down the Empire, the Twin Towers in 1993. He said, "I'm proud to go to prison for the rest of my life because of my hatred for your support for the state of Israel." So I would just suggest that instead of drawing the correct conclusions there, the conclusions, in my view, being that this is going to happen forever unless we rein the Israelis in, this is what happened. Now, devolving from ISIS and Al Qaeda and Al Nusra is this new HTS group, which has changed its name to protect the innocent, so to speak. Okay, and this new fellow Al Jalani, who's already changed his name, I forget what it is now, but maybe they think if they change their name, they're no longer on the terrorist list. I'd have to ask Tony Blinken about that. It may not be quite so simple.
I don't get it though, Ray. So, I mean, is this good for Trump? Because he's going to give Netanyahu everything he wants, right?
Yeah,
And
it's kind of
what is it? So, and what are they going to just deport all them Palestinians? What's going on here?
no.
Might makes right, don't it? Don't it, Ray? I mean, what?
Well, that's what
I
it
may
looks
be
like.
a little bewildered here, but I just sitting here, like Nixon at the end. If you really look at the thing with the tapes and everything, he was starting to really question what he'd been all about, right? What the hell was it all about? I'm starting to wonder about that. What the hell was this all about? It's all if we could have gotten Al Qaeda to just support Israel. Is that what's going on?
Well, Al Qaeda was pretty much defeated until it turned into ISIS. And we pretty much ruined ISIS as well, with links and stayed in Syria, and there were people in Syria which we called moderate rebels, not terrorists, but moderate rebels, who now have come to the fore together with others.
All
There are
right, so
many,
I
many
get it, right? I
factions.
get it, right. So this guy, what
Okay.
the hell is his name? The HMS?
Al Jolani is,
Okay, so
yeah,
what I'm going to tell people, we just made a mistake putting them on a terror list, right? And or that you can do business with certain terrorists, you can't do it with others. So I get it. Now,
well,
can you tell the American people that? I guess not, but I get it. So he's a good terrorist, and the other guys are the
well,
bad terrorists.
he was a head
Yeah,
chopper,
I
Mr.
am
President.
not. I'm missing a few beats here. I'll admit that. It's been
Okay.
quite a shock losing this election. I just,
Okay,
goddamn,
just
he just
easy to remember this
he
is
just
he was a head
messed
chopper.
that up. She just what they thinking, and everything, getting them. Let him. I mean, they should have said we can bring down grocery prices. Right? Since when can't we bring down groceries? The goddamn Federal Reserve. This is Powell. Those guys screwed us. Yeah, go
Well,
ahead, Jay.
there are no
Is this an
groceries
official
in
briefing or
Syria.
what? What's the story? What are we going to do?
Mr. President, there are no groceries in Syria. People are
Oh,
beginning to starve and suffer almost as bad as people in the West Bank and in Gaza. So
yeah.
the place is a mess.
But that's good, right? I mean, that's what.
Well, it's good if you don't like the Palestinians, if you think it's okay
No,
that
but I mean,
there's
they
people.
gotta learn. Don't they gotta learn that they have to do what Netanyahu says, right? That'll be good
Well,
for them. And what the U.S. wants. I mean, what are we kidding ourselves here? I read an article there. I was looking at it the other day. Today, Foreign Affairs. It came over my computer. They say that Trump, he's an isolationist. You got to get rid of that. You got to stop him. We have to favor. Well, who said it? What's the hell is his name? O'Connor. Mitch. What is it? The Senate?
Mc, McConnell.
Yeah, he said we have to assert American primacy.
Yeah,
Isn't that what
right.
he's saying? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the key,
So
Mr.
that was
President.
what that's what Kamala should have said. She should have said, we are in favor of American primacy, and that's why we got all these troops and everything. And Trump is only lying when he says wants to make America great again. We're keeping America great. I told her that. That's what she should say. You know,
Well,
we
Mr.
want
President,
primacy. We want to control, and you ain't going to do it with these tariffs. You got to do it with blowing people up and everything. And then there are a lot of collateral damage. I don't know, Ray. Okay, I'll shut up now and let you do your briefing. But it just seems to me maybe we all been naive, and you know, might makes right, and you kick ass. And maybe not, it's right. Just go kill whoever you want to kill. You get away with it. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting cynical. Maybe this whole
Mr.
human rights thing doesn't mean anything. I don't know.
Mr. President, the world is very different from the one that, well, even Madeleine Albright described, where she said we're exceptional, we were indispensable. We're not anymore, and that's the fly in the ointment. We have to get along with countries.
Why, Ray? Why we spend so much money on the damn military? I couldn't do anything decent. We spend more than half of what they call the discretionary budget, which is the only money you can actually do something with. And then people hold me accountable. Maybe we could have lowered food prices and everything, but no. And so what? If not, military. It's got to be military. It's not a war of ideas. It's just blowing stuff up. That's what happened,
Well,
right?
two things on.
Blowing stuff up there in Syria or anywhere. And well, look at the Israeli people. Don't they back Netanyahu? Some people think the court's going to throw them in jail. They're not going to do that. Everybody wins militarily. The whole people love you.
Well, Mr.
Yeah.
President, I have other things to cover here, but I want to wind up by just saying again that the way we see it, Netanyahu is a loose cannon. He thinks he's got you by the short hairs, if you'll pardon the expression, and he could start a war with Iran in the full expectation that you'll jump in with both feet. So just be aware of that. I'd like to move to Ukraine now, if I may.
Yeah, it's your show, Ray. I know.
All
I got
right.
to shut up. But
Well, there's a.
those oil tankers went down, right?
I'm sorry.
Some of them Russian oil tankers, they're screwing up all the water there and the fish and everything. I don't know. Yeah,
Well,
go ahead, Ukraine.
on Ukraine, we've got a situation where the Russian forces are moving forward steadily, and even the New York Times now is admitting this. They're very close, or they're partially in this main stronghold of Pokrovsk, Russian name for which is Krasnoarmeysk, which means Red Army, coincidentally. That's a hub. That's a road pub. And if the Russians take that, it's all over for whatever forces remain in that part of the Donbass. That could happen within the next weeks. It could even happen before you leave office. Just saying that's very likely in the cards. And the New York Times is up and admitting that, saying these fortresses are about to fall. Now, I'm trying to look at my notes here to see what else you need to know. Oh yeah, well, Trump has said now that Zelensky has to make a deal. He just gave an interview. Trump did. You probably know about that. Zelensky's got a deal. Okay, he's got a deal with Russia. There are too many dead people there. Okay, well, that's not what your guys are saying. Your guys are saying, no, you Ukraine, you got to recruit 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. So we have people to man all those fancy weapons we gave you. Just saying, Mr. President, that's the picture that your folks are giving to the rest of the world. We want the thing to continue, and I dare say. Today, Syrsky, the supreme commander of the Ukrainian troops, said, we're going to have to do something unaccustomed. We're going to have to do something very different to stem this Russian advance. We don't know what he's talking about, even though we have pretty good access to his folks. So be on the alert that the Ukrainians might try to do something really dastardly, And the Russians, they have the capability to destroy the rest of their electrical capacity. About 60% is already gone. It's going to be a terrible winter for those folks. And for the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, that Blinken and Sullivan, with all due respect, are insisting that the Ukrainians recruit and put into the battle just as they leave. Trump is taking a very different approach, and he's saying, well, Zelensky should deal with the Russians, and when he comes in office, is a sure bet that he'll deal with the Russians as long as Zelensky goes along with them, and when Zelensky decides to resist, that will be the end of Zelensky in our view. So Ukraine is really at a turning point. The full victory all the way to the Dnieper River could happen in the next couple of weeks, i.e., even before you leave office. Now, there's one other thing.
So where's all the weapons we gave? I thought that was supposed to turn the tide.
Yeah, most of them have been destroyed, Mr. President. The ones that are in the pipeline, well, Lockheed, Raytheon, General Electric, Boeing, they're making a lot of money. The weapons won't get there in time to make any difference. The other thing is that those troops, the crackerjack troops that went into Kursk 2 months ago, they're surrounded now. The Russians can pretty much do what they want with those troops. My guess is that they will not kill them all. They will hold them captive and use them as bargaining chips once the new administration comes in. That's just a guess, but there are thousands and thousands of crackerjack troops without their equipment, because their equipment has all been destroyed, in Kursk, that is, in Russia, now, awaiting what happens to them. So Ukraine is very, very bleak, Mr. President, and that's just the way it looks on the way out for your administration. And my fear again, or our fear again, is that Sierski is talking about something very unusual, something surprising that he has up his sleeve. I'll bet that Tony Blinken and Jacob Sullivan know about that. If you don't know about it, you might ask them what they think Sierski is talking about when he's talking about something really, really surprising and really, really changed the pitch of things there. The other thing, of course, is this big dispute about whether that new missile that the Russians used against a factory in Dnipro, whether that's a game changer. Your folks are saying, no, that's not a game changer. Many of the scientists and physicists that we consult with say, well, it sure is close to a game changer as we can find, and the Russians will probably have many of them once they put them in serial production, which will be next year. They probably have a couple of those to test out if it comes to that. But right now, they're contenting themselves with destroying the rest of the electrical grid in Ukraine. It's going to be a really bad winter. This should stop. It should stop soon. It'll be interesting to see if 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds will have to suffer the fate of their elders, or whether it will stop what might be a good idea, Mr. President, is a Christmas truce. How about that? Happened during World War I. Very famous. That's something that's come up in circles that don't want any war. We'd ask you to just think about that as one option here to stop the carnage, to stop the killing. And I dare say, were you to propose something like that, you could probably get the Pope to go along. It would be really hard for Putin to say no. So if that's what you'd like to have for your legacy for Christmas, that's just an idea.
Yeah.
Now, what else? Oh, yeah, one thing I want to ask you, Mr. President, having to do with Ukraine and having to do with the nuclear standoff here between Russians and us. We have not been able to get a straight answer from the Pentagon. Is there a major nuclear command exercise, usually scheduled for November? Is it underway? We don't know. In 1983, we came this close to blowing up the whole world because the Russians thought that our nuclear exercise was the real thing. That's all documented. It's been investigated. We came this close. So please ask Austin if you have a chance. What are you doing with respect to warning the Russians about major exercises, if indeed you're conducting them? Because although Avril Haines, the director of national intelligence, is supposed to be told these things by the Pentagon, she usually isn't. And that's what happened in 1983. We didn't know how threatened the Russians. We thought they were, my God, the KGB was running all over the place. They thought it was the real thing. We nipped it in the bud, but we don't have that chance today because nobody knows about what the Pentagon is doing. I just offer that as a suggestion as to how you might want to proceed. What else? Oh yeah.
Well,
I
wait,
should have started.
wait a minute. I think we gave them all these weapons. Why don't they could take out some electricity there in Russia? They could take out some city. They could take out. We gave them really good weapons, right? And Zelensky wants a bargaining chip. He's going to think he could blow something up big in Russia. Get them all to freeze and not have electricity. And then what's Russia going to do? They've said they're going to attack whoever gave them the weapon. France, some other things, Poland, right? And I
Well,
think there'd be some value in there being an escalation of war when Trump gets in, because then he can't make nice with the Ruskies and work out some peace agreement for whatever the hell it is. No, then you got to avenge because the Russians will attack. The capital or something, right?
Well, Mr. President, the real danger is that the Ukrainians could do something really dastardly, and that is limited, in our view, to attacking nuclear power facilities. They are in range, okay? There's one in Kursk. There's one there's one in Ukraine. There are a couple in Ukraine. So were they to do that, that would be a catastrophe. All bets would be off. Other than that, they don't have the range to reach any Russian cities to speak of. They're only, the TACMs are the longest range missiles the U.S. made, and they're 190 miles into Russia. The Russians have moved their aircraft and whatever they had within 190 miles of Ukraine out of the area. They're not vulnerable there anymore. Now, here's the thing. To the Germans, Olaf Scholz has said, no, we won't let you, we're not going to use our Taurus missiles, which have almost twice the range of the ATACMS. We're not going to let you use those. And I said that months ago, and I'm sticking by that. Why is he saying that? Because he knows that the majority of the German population are sick and tired of supporting this Ukraine war and worried sick that the Russians will retaliate, okay? And that leads me to the thing I probably should have started with. Scholz has fallen. His government is over, okay? They're going to have elections shortly after you leave office. And God knows who's going to win in those elections because, as I say, there's a growing sentiment in Germany that this is a bad idea, taking dictation from the United States and getting us into the mess that has occurred in Ukraine and depriving us of the wealth that we could be using for our own infrastructure. The business about the Nord Stream pipeline, Mr. President, is also going to come up. And some German politicians are going to say, well, now who blew up that pipeline? So just a word to the wise, you're going to maybe be asked that question before you leave. You might want to read Cy Hirsch's piece on that, if no one has shown you that yet. But that's going to come up, and it may redound to the access of parties that have never been part of the German government before. An extreme conservative party, the Alternative für Deutschland, the AfD, and also another party that is very to the left. So the Christian Democrats are supposed to win, but even they, they won't be able to rule without a coalition. So all this, there's bedlam. There's no government in Germany. There's no government in France. It's going to look pretty shabby. It's good that you got that highest civilian award from the German government before it fell apart. That was good planning, I suppose. But that's the situation in Germany. People in Europe are not knowing what to do, particularly with Trump coming in. And we just want you to know that not only Ukraine is a real worry, Germany is a real worry, but Germany has already decided not to allow its Taurus missiles to be fired into Russia proper, not only because they have longer range, but also because of public dissatisfaction with the endless support and the drain on their money that has gone to Ukraine.
So that's where primacy gets you, right? It's
Well, primacy,
maybe Trump's something onto something. Maybe we known each other. Well, how long have you been doing this? 27 years. You've been
that's
with the
right. Yeah.
CIA and all that crap. So maybe power ain't all it's cracked up to be. I mean, I've been president of the most powerful country, empire, whatever you want to call it, in the history of the world. And and then I lose to some competent boob as Trump, and he's scoring a lot of points now, a lot of points. People listen to him and everything. Maybe that's what they want, is some kind of isolationist, mind your own business, and don't have to run the world. I mean, it's not, it doesn't get you trains to run faster, it doesn't make your schools any better, maybe there's something to that. I'll call you a liar if you ever quote me on this, but it seems to me, what has it all been about? I supported every damn military budget. I gave the Pentagon everything they wanted. I listened to the neocons. They all took over my government. Who the hell, that Victor Notori or whatever, Newland? What the hell does she know? She goes into this shit, and maybe Trump, he just can walk away. Can he just do that, right? He can walk back and say, well, it's not our fight. And American public might go for it.
I hate to say this, Mr. President, but with respect to Ukraine, he can. Okay? He's already saying, I wouldn't have gotten into Ukraine. He's saying firing missiles into Russia proper is foolish. And there's enough flexibility in Putin's very stringent conditions for negotiation. There's still enough flexibility for Trump to do a deal. So,
well, he also said, I thought that was heresy. Would go after him on the Espionage Act. He said he didn't think that Ukraine should go into NATO now.
well, that remains to be seen. Some of his negotiators are floating the notion that, well, maybe.
Yeah, but wasn't that with Time magazine or some?
Yeah, right. Maybe we could agree that Ukraine won't be in NATO for 20 years.
Yeah.
No, or 10 years. I don't think Putin. I think Putin would come back and say, well, let's say 50 years, and Trump will come back 35 years.
Yeah.
Deal. I mean, there's lots of leeway for a deal. I
Hey,
mentioned to
Ray,
you.
we're two old codgers here, and you claim to be much, well, you're my age, whatever. But what has it been all about? I mean, I'm getting in a kind of a depressed, philosophical, and really, you're not going to you're not writing some goddamn memoir or anything, all right, like that. I'll just say
No, I
you're
won't.
I'll
But
just say Putin agent,
just,
liar, whatever you are. But the fact of the matter is, maybe power is not what it cracked up to be.
well, Mr.
Maybe
President, the power. Yeah.
is it possible we overreached? I know, is that possible? I mean,
Well, yes, but it
I've
depends on.
been seeing this since with Obama. And I was in there and now, and what the hell do we really control? Can we? what can we really do to make things better? I don't know. I don't
Mr.
know.
President, it depends on where the power lies, and you're no stranger to the notion that all that money we've given to Ukraine, we're really giving to the military-industrial complex. That's where all those millions and billions have gone. And so
Yeah,
the structure is such, and Eisenhower warned about this, that the real power lies in these people that foster the notion that we are the indispensable country in the world. That way we have to build our military and spend 10 times as much as the Russians in an unfocused kind of way, whereas the Russians focus like hell and come up with hypersonic missiles. The shape of the world is different. You talked about the rules-based international system. Well, that is might makes right. And the problem is we ain't got the might that we used to have. We have to make things right by living together with other countries with due respect. And that includes not only China, it includes Russia, and the people in that BRICS organization, which represent most of the people in the world. And most of the people in the world are people of color. We've got to play ball with them. And so that's that's my parting shot on that concept. That's what's wrong. The military-industrial complex is such such a potent force that it's really hard for you or anyone to take them on. You probably recognize that after these last many years you've been in public office.
yeah. Well, you can't take them on. You can't do anything. I don't know. I used to think it was simpler, but you know, where did it go wrong? Just take a few minutes. I'm tired of your briefings. Take a few minutes. You was Kennedy? He wanted to break the CIA up. You guys, right, into 1,000 pieces,
Well,
right?
they had tricked him.
Uh,
They had tricked him on the Bay of Pigs. Yeah, they
yeah.
wanted to
Maybe
scatter them to.
you guys are the problem because not you guys, because you're just a bunch of woolly-headed liberal academics there over what you call analysis. Guys who have the real power are the ones that can kill people. Did you guys do Syria? You got rid of Assad?
Well, by you guys, do you mean the analysts, or do you mean the guys on the other side of those
I
turnstiles and
mean
the
the
other part of the
goddamn
building?
CIA is
Up,
I'm talking about. The CIA.
the operations people. Okay, the
Yeah, what
people
the
that
hell did you
Bill
guys
Burns
do?
knows
You're
about.
always blowing people up. You're always killing people. So
Of
don't
course,
tell
that's
me
on the
you
public record.
huh?
Obama said Obama said Assad has to go. Now, how are we going to do that? The idea is the president turns to the head of the CIA and says, "Make it happen." How is that possible? Because under the law, Obama has the power to instruct the director of Central Intelligence, now the director of National Intelligence, to perform such other functions and duties related to intelligence as the president shall from time to time direct. There's no supervision over that. Oversight by these congressional committees is a joke. And so they go off and do their thing. Congress appropriates the money, and they spend $1 billion building up moderate rebels who turn out to be not so moderate, and now they're trying to turn out to put a put a facade on as being moderate again by changing their names. It's pretty foolish. You're right. This has to be reined in as well. In my view, the CIA has long outlived its usefulness, and I think the trouble that they and the FBI gave to Trump during his first term may come back to haunt them. Many of them will be leaving. Many of them will be craving pardons from you, Mr. President. And maybe I should, while I'm thinking of this issue, uh, as I left my office, the head of our office, Avril Haines, stopped me in the hall, and she said, "Ray, uh, if the subject of pardons come up, if the president's thinking about pardons, I don't know how to say this, but tell him not to forget. I mean, we gave him a really bad advice on Ukraine and all that, but wasn't it was malfeasance. Was it? So if you could just mention that I'm sorry, or not that way, but mention my name, please. And Bill Burns, he'd like to be mentioned too, maybe to get on your list. Now, this is a little irregular, Mr. President, but she's my boss, and so is he. And so, if you're doing this long list of people to pardon, include not only Hillary Clinton and the rest of them, but my bosses, the Director of National Intelligence, and the head of the CIA as well, if you think you can bring yourself to do that.
Boy, this is as craven as it gets. You're just begging there to get people. Well, I don't know. One thing
I'm not.
about Trump, the one thing about Trump, we don't know. He's going to be vindictive and get the people who try to get him, or is he going to rise to a higher level and say, "I'm not going after them anymore, but they're losers." He's going to say, he calls me a loser, and then he's going to say, I think he might. You think maybe he could pull the Nixon going to China? Could just pull something, because he can't be going to war with China. He's got to take out, the Tesla plant there. It's their biggest plant. Half the cars are made there. So, Elon Musk there, they're not going to. He wouldn't be happy, and people over at Apple wouldn't be happy. I mean, nobody's going to be happy doing that. So maybe the one thing about a con man, he can shift on a dime. He can smell the market. He can see what's going on and say, hey, this shit is a loser. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that the Democrats might be finished. If this guy can because we're painting him as such a horrible figure. He just says cools it, tries to work out some deals to cool it. Then we'd have a hard time getting back. Because without Trump
That,
as a madman, that's the only thing we got going for us. With all this
that's
time,
quite.
and you don't listen to us, you don't put us in power, you're going to have this lunatic Trump, the egomaniac, grabs women's privates, everything else, and should the public vote for him because they don't believe that. They believe he might be able to solve some of these problems, and they think, you know what? They think the country sucks. That's what they think. How the hell did that happen? I'll never know. All
Well,
right.
I think, Mr. President, that you're right in thinking that at least for the nonce, the incoming president will be oozing charm from every pore and sliding his way across the floor like that count in My Fair Lady. Um, but when push comes to shove, he's going to have to deal with the same things you have. And you mentioned China just now. I forget whether I mentioned the biggest exercise the Chinese Navy has done in 20 years just last week, when when Medvedev, the head of the deputy head of the National Security Council of Russia, was there during that same week. So, if you have been misled on anything, the most important thing you were misled on by Blinken and Sullivan is that you could play Russia off against China. Just the opposite happened. And if it feels any better, Trump's going to have to live with that too. And I see that Medvedev going to China to talk to Xi Jinping is coordinating what happens when Trump comes in with respect to Ukraine. What might the Russians feel compelled to do? And are you Xi? Are you Chairman Xi? Are you with us again, just like you were in February 2022? We'll have to see, but they're together as never before, and that's largely the credit goes, if credit is the right word,
All
to
right.
Antony
All right.
Blinken and Sullivan.
You don't like
So
those
please,
guys at all, but
well, I love them. I'm commanded to love my neighbor, but my God, if pity. I pity the trouble that they've got you into, Mr. President, and you
you
might
know
want
what
to
I don't
consider
understand? I'm gonna
pardoning
cut
them
you.
too.
I'm gonna cut you off here, but I love my son. and I've lost a son, so I had to do what I did for him. But if you think about it, you know, it's money talks, and there was a lot of money to be made, a lot of business dealings, and I don't know if any of it means anything. I don't know. I mean, what is it all about? We haven't made people freer. We're not making anything better. And God damn, I just here I am, still the most powerful person on the planet, and I have no handle on what the hell you could do. I have no sense of how to make it better. I think it's all a crapshoot, and we've been lying about every damn thing. And God, it's a mess. All right, Ray. Let's hope it doesn't explode on my watch. Which,
One last thing, Mr. President.
yeah,
The South Korean president declared martial law, and
yeah,
now he's been impeached, and now he can't do anything for 6 months. Okay.
yeah.
Now, there's a suggestion that he sought counsel from one of your major advisors before he decided to declare martial law. If that's the case, then you might want to consider advising your advisors not to even think of that during these next 5 weeks. That would be my parting shot for today.
What the hell you just say? You say who told him?
Well, this
Who told
fellow
him?
who was in,
Yeah,
he said that he sought advice from various people. There are reports that among those people are your closest advisors, the ones that have got you into a peck of trouble. If that's the case, these same advisors might think to advise you to declare martial law on your way out for whatever reason, mostly having to do with their own political and freedom freedom future if Trump goes after them. And I imagine that Blinken and Sullivan are now on your pardon list. I wouldn't blame you for that. You of course, asked them to serve.
yeah. Well, I got to do that. Otherwise, they're going to be writing books that are terrible, mean spirited. I got to help them out. Yeah, give them a little protection. Yeah. All right, Ray. I never thought it would end this way. It's pretty goddamn miserable. Still hoping that Trump screws up and disgraces the son of a bitch. But if he pulls off some, well, and he's going to blow it. He's going to blow it with Israel. And if you blow it, giving Israel Netanyahu everything he wants, well, you can't make any peace in the Mideast. It's all be ships being fired on by Hutus and whatever. Who knows? All right. See ya.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.